Alright, I wanted to create a separate video from this 3.2 section which shows you how to find the mean of a frequency table. And actually, let me restate that. In 3.1 we found the mean of a frequency table. Now we're going to find the standard deviation. And one of the reasons why I used the formula that I did in the last video was because it directly relates to this one as well. You're just going to follow the formula for the standard deviation of a frequency table. You'll know to grab this one because it has frequencies in it, or f's. So this is n times the sum of the f times x squareds minus the sum of the f times x's, that whole thing squared, all divided by n times n minus 1. And so this is very similar to how you found the mean of a frequency table. We just need to understand each one of those variables. It's the formula that we would be drawn to with the frequency table because it has the f in it. And so pretty easy to choose that formula. So let's start figuring out some things. Let me highlight, and I'll do it in green again like I did the last time, the n. So the n for us is the number of data points. Now the number of data points is not 5. If you think it's 5, then you don't understand the frequency tables. And that's a very common misunderstanding that we want to have worked through in Chapter 2 and get reinforced here. The number of classes is 5, but there's 15 data points in that first class, followed by 14, followed by 3, followed by 2, followed by 1. And so if you look at this, that's 5, 20, 34, 35 pieces of data, it looks like, right? If you take the 15 plus the 14 plus the 3 plus the 2 plus the 1, yes, you end up with 35. And so we can come into our formula right now and say, well, I know this. This is, actually, let me come down here. This is the square root. And now we know that n is 35 times some number minus some number squared, all divided by 35 times 34. And in this way it feels very, very, very similar to what was going on in the previous section. Now we need to get an x, so I'm going to highlight that in blue again. What is that x? Well, the x is a data point, but we don't know how many zeros, ones, or twos there are. We just know there's 15 in that category. So since we don't know, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new column, just like we did in the previous section for the mean of a frequency table. And what the x is going to be is the midpoint of each class. Since we don't know how many 0, 1s, and 2s there are, we're going to assume all 15 of the numbers are number 1. Then in the next class, now why did I pick number 1? Because it's right in the middle between 0 and 2. In the next class, right in the middle between 3 and 5 is 4. Then 7, then 10, then 13. Notice they're all 3 apart from one another, which matches what the what the class width should do, right? And so now we're going to need to find f times x. Let's go do that. Let's create a new column in which we find f times x, because that's what's being called for in this second position. Well, 15 times 1, that's 15. 14 times 4, 56. 3 times 7, 21. 2 times 10, 20. 1 times 13, 13. And we just need to add those, right? Because this is asking us to add up. Let me underline what this is. Add up all the f times x's. Okay. And so we get 15 plus 56 plus 21 plus 20 plus 13. And we get 125. Awesome. So we have a nice 125 coming in there. Now we need to get the sum of the f times x squareds. And so I'll highlight that in red. Actually, let me do something really quick. Let me get rid of that line I did and come in here with the red highlighter. This is the one we're working on next. And what are we going to do? We're going to create a red column. And that red column is going to be exactly that, f times x squared. So my suggestion would be to look at this from an algebra point of view. Certainly you could square the x and multiply by f, but you could just multiply these two columns together. Come up there. Those two columns together right there. Why? Because it introduces another x. So what do we get for this first one? Well, we get 15. And then we get 4 times 56 for 224. Now notice if you did 16 times 14, which would be x squared times f, you get the same 224. 7 times 21, you get 147. 10 times 20, 200. 13 times 13, 169. And what do we need to do? We need to add the 15 plus the 224 plus the 147 plus the 200 plus the 169. And we get 755. Right? So 15, 224, 147, 200, and 169 are the right numbers in there to be added. And just reviewing what I put in there, and we get 755. Now the rest is just following the calculation. Remember how we're going to put it in. I'll write it again. 35 times 755 minus 125 to the second power equals. And I'm looking at the number 10,800. Then we're going to hit divide by. And remember, I'll put it in red. As we do that, our book is going to have, or sorry, calculator is going to say answers. We can take that answer divided by, and then we're going to put in open parentheses 35 times 34. If you don't do the 35 times 34 in parentheses, the 34 goes up top, and we don't want that to happen. And so now we're looking at the number 9.0756, and it keeps going. We don't necessarily care about that answer because they're only asking for the standard deviation. So now we're going to hit the square root, and we could get a little panic because it looks like that. And this one I'll put in blue. We're going to go use that second function and find that A and S key and get A and S in there. And you can close the parentheses or not. You hit equals, it's going to take the square root of that, and you see your answer, 3.0125, and it keeps going. So we're around to 3.0. That's what the standard deviation is equal to. That's the type of work that you're doing in a part of the homework. Most of it's finding the range, standard deviation, and variance, but I did know and want to do a separate video over finding the standard deviation if data was given to you in a frequency table. Alright, good luck in 3.2. Let me know what questions